to the Holistic Diabetes Solutions Summit, and we are bringing you 14 of the top thought leaders in diabetes and what the new diabetes movement is all about, because it's about prevention and proactivity. And no one knows that better than Barbara Pasternak, who's with us today, because Barbara Pasternak is a mother of 3, and she is a non-stop true advocate when it comes to wellness and diabetes. And not just that, but she's also a very, very strong businesswoman and a woman of influence. So Barbara and I met many years ago, and we've reconnected. And what's really great about what Barbara has been doing is she's been creating hope, liaison, and peer support for those in childhood and coming into adulthood and transitioning in life. I can't really say enough about Barbara, but welcome, Barbara.
Thank you very much for having me, and it's an honor to speak to you today. Thank you very much. So what we do is we create we're the conduit between that transition period. We give hope, we give support, we give financial support and peer support, mentorship support, mental health support for these kids who drop out of the system or who are not sure that they're going to continue on.
Something that you said right there is, attitude and hope can be, when you're, like you said, it's a relentless condition. I mean, some babies, some just young babies, and I know that your children, I think you said, were in 5th grade, and within a year it was another boy in 7th grade. So you had this experience not with one child but 2, kind of like in the same year, and that's devastating. And the thing is even if you have a positive attitude, and even when you go for your appointments, you are looking for support from the people that you're going to, and sometimes that support is very lacking. That's why it's wonderful, like with the Hope Foundation, that the peer, that's what I think is the most incredible thing, is that you've recognized that as a mother of children with type 1. And I know back in the days when we met 25 years ago, what was there? There was nothing.
Nothing.
Like, you became the leader and warrior here in Canada.
This is our holistic way that we get our kids to come on board and to heal them. There's no, I think it's trust, and I think it's understanding how these kids think. And because we are blessed with 730 alumni who receive scholarships in the last 21 years, over 70% of them are paying it forward through our programs and helping us create the next program that we're thinking of. And it's always like that. We put out surveys for them. We ask them questions about their lived experience and what better support can these kids get but from kids who walk the walk. Right. So our peer support, our mentorship program, our Hope Connects program, which is now in the universities, is really thriving. And I have to honestly say that we have been blessed to get money from the government. We got 2 endorsements, and they allowed us to move forward into the next level. And we are now at a point now where we're launching programs in the universities. And this is without any financial support. We're just doing it because we can.
Someone needs to.
And it needs to. And our first launch was at McMaster University. We had over 50 kids from the Diabetes Club who attended. And if you can believe, only 4 of those kids had diabetes. The other 46 were just interested to come out, to learn about diabetes, to know, because their mothers, their grandmothers, their fathers, their aunts and uncles have it, and they don't know what it is.
Well, the fact is that they're sensitive to it, and they can see that it's not okay. They can see the struggles, they can see.
Correct.
So they want to be able to help, I guess. That's what it is. They want to be able to support and help. And where can they learn that? Well, the Diabetes Hope Foundation and Barbara's program.
Well, we try. The other piece is, and I know your whole mantra is holistic. I think because we are so strong with our paying it forward, our mentorship, our peer support, it is done through a holistic concept
Yeah.
that these kids who have walked the walk can really advocate the talk.
Yeah.
And they can really be empathetic towards their mentees who are asking them to support them unconditionally without any judgment. And where we have our programs have been studied. We've created programs, or we have a lot of intellectual property that goes along with it, because we can't get funding without statistics and data. Right. So we do have a lot of data. And through our mental health framework, which was created 3 years ago, it allowed us to jump right into the clinics to help the kids who are struggling and waiting for psychiatrists and psychologists, for those people to help them. But the wait time is it's quite long. So we're that in between piece.
I'm all about combining the best in tradition and the best in naturopathic, and having a completely integrative approach, and not just one or two things. It's what resonates for each person, because it's different for each person. But I think there's something very valuable in what you're saying. And here's the thing. We can all go to any kind of therapist, psychiatrist of any sort, but it's not always somebody who's living with this or has firsthand experience with this. So in a peer mentor group, they're not just like-minded, they're experience proven as well. So it's not like a pat on the hand and saying it'll be okay. It's no, you know what, I get it. This is serious, and this is what I've tried. Why don't we try this? Because it actually is experience.
I agree. And it's been proven time and time again in studies all over the world that the only way that you can really communicate with someone who's going through a lot when they're younger is through someone who's their peer, who can really, they relate to the kids their own age or a little older who speak their language.
Well, so I know my niece actually came through some of the programs there, and she also went to Banting and Best. But I know that today, and I'm going to say from the age of 8 or 9 to the age of 27 now, that she is still best friends with the people that she met through your club and Banting and Best, because they all go through these things together, and they truly are there for each other. They're like sisters and brothers.
Exactly. And the camaraderie that you were talking about that your niece has created with her mentors and folks has been so overwhelming for us, because what we do in our scholarship program going into the 23rd year is we match the new scholarship winners to a mentor who's attending the same university or college, or who's taking the same course. So we just match them up. And the stories and the history, the wonderful history that's been created over the last 23 years have been amazing. And we showcase that relationship at our scholarship event. We have them as keynote speakers. So they speak to the new kids who are coming on and say, you know what, we're going to match you up with a peer and a mentor. Take advantage of it, because these are going to be lifelong friends forever.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's really beautiful. Now, there's something that you touched on, and I don't know, and more it is being spoken of, but like 25 years ago, 28 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, it's only been in the last recent 5 to 8 years, people are now looking more at the emotional and the mental aspects of the challenges that are truly life-threatening. I mean, it's nothing to not be serious about, because it is. So it's nothing to underrate. And then looking at how that affects, like, there's embarrassment, there's feeling different, there's feeling isolated and alone when you're around a lot of people. There's the why me, especially in these younger ages. And I think you address that. So when you're talking about the emotional and mental, I think that that's going to be a special gift today for our audience, because that is an area that that's not often talked about.
It's so true. And how we identified mental health with youth living with diabetes was through the application process. And I have read thousands and thousands of applications over the past 22 years. And you get to see their spirit and soul in the essays that they all write. So over the last couple of years, I've noticed that mental health was mentioned many, many times. Yeah. Also, many of them are LGBTQ. A lot of them are hiding behind, their veils. A lot of immigrants coming, very confused, very anxious. So really, the whole landscape of the applications that we are receiving currently are so different from the ones that we received even up until 5 years ago.
Sure.
Because they're coming from all over. I mean, we just granted a scholarship to an amazing young man last year who was fighting bombs in the streets in Iraq, and he couldn't get insulin for a year, and he was taking insulin, diluting it with water, and then living in refugee camps for a year and couldn't get needles. He got a scholarship. We want him to be a keynote speaker this year at a scholarship.
Yes. Wow.
But the mental health piece is a really interesting piece, because when we identified, I don't remember the statistics, I think 40% of the kids have diabetes, have severe mental health issues.
For sure.
I would say 100% of the kids have anxiety, depression, burnout. I mean, that just comes with the territory.
No question. Yeah, anxiety, hands down, for sure. Yes.
I think what resonates to me, just going back when I used to, every 3 months, taking my kids to clinic, and I used to say to the doctor, I tried everything. I followed everything to a T, but their A1Cs are not perfect. Right. Like, I felt as a mother, I felt so distressed.
Right.
And I remember Dr. Ehrlich, who is an amazing doctor, he said, Barbara, there is never a perfect. Perfect is just not out there ever. So I think that was good advice that he gave me. But anyway, going back to the mental health issue, what we did, it was a project that we identified about 3 years ago. We took about 54 volunteers with 13 roundtable discussions hosted by DHF, and the roundtable discussions consisted of 20 psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers all across Ontario who dealt with diabetes and mental health. We engaged about 67 youth living with diabetes, and after we identified the issues, we went out to the community, and we decided to get our community, which are our mentors, we asked them if they would like to be trained to be certified peers, peer support mentors.
Right.
We did get about 20 of the kids. We put them up in U of T for the weekend, and we train them in compassion fatigue. But anyways, there's 4 or 5 different mandates that we certified them through Mood Disorder Association, who specializes in that. Yeah. Leadership training, de-escalation training, safe talk, and mental health first aid. After they were certified, we went out to the clinics, and it was a road trip that took months and months and months. After we spoke to all the clinicians, say, we have this amazing program, and we offer it to your kids, and it's a stopgap before they reach the psychiatrist or psychologist. It'll be so it took a long time. We went back. They call it a pilot program because you just throw it against the wall and start all over again. We sort of revamped the program 4 or 5 times, and then 6 months later, we got 50 mentors and 50 mentees. And it was the most amazing experience. Alex ran the program so successfully. And what we managed to get from it was the evaluation assessment that we developed. And it identified the quality of life for the kids.
Yes.
It was broken down into 3 areas: diabetes, satisfaction, impact, and worry. So each of the mentors in the program went through an extensive training, of course, and the unique thing about the program is that when they entered the program, each of the mentees identified each of their mentors through a Bitmoji and a profile that they actually related to. So there was a
that's
synergy
cool
between the two of them. And at the end of the feasibility study, we identified quality of life for these kids.
Yeah.
And it was a very, very successful program. And it's continuously running all the time.
So let's talk about that for a minute, because the quality of life, and just so people have an understanding, the quality of life for parents and children, young adults, living with diabetes is anxiety provoking at all times, because it's always worry. Is everything going to be okay? Are there going to be lows? The highs are too high for too how long? And it's a roller coaster, and it's who do I talk to? And people aren't listening to me. And what was the biggest nugget? What was the biggest light that was recognized with the success of your programs with your mentors and mentees? Was it that somebody had like a brother or sister to go to at any time? Was it that the advice was like so life-saving that it was able to like decrease anxiety a particular percentage? And how did that enrich their quality of life?
So when they begin the program, they identify one issue that they want to improve. Okay. We only do one little at a time.
Okay.
So it could be as easy as they want to go on a insulin pump, and their parents don't want them to.
Right.
So that is the focus of the discussions, that it's on Zoom actually, and the kids speak to. So we do a comparison. Okay. We do the 2 weeks of the discussion, the second part, maybe the second 3 weeks, third and fifth week, and then a month, or depends how long the communication goes. And then we do what is the success? What was the biggest concern? Was it addressed properly? Was it addressed sort of, or wasn't addressed at all? Was it successful or not successful?
Right.
So we were able to increase
a lot of data.
So it was food choices. It was negative effects of drugs and alcohol. There was decreased anxiety for sure in many of them because they are able to talk about it. And it's the relationships between the two of them that were developed in such a organic way. Right. And if it wasn't a good fit, we knew from the very beginning we had to change. And I think we only changed 2 out of 50. It wasn't a good fit.
But also it's also giving them skill set and understanding for enriching relationships with others.
Correct.
Yes.
And trust.
Yeah.
And trust.
Yeah.
And we had it was life-changing for some of these kids and the parents too, because very often the parents had to sign if the kids were under 16, but if they're 16 and over, it was up to the youth to decide they wanted to have that relationship. So we, we're insured, the kids are certified, we have a responsibility to the public to make sure that these kids are very responsible. And, we had one situation that happened was life-threatening, but we managed to jump on it immediately, and it worked out very well.
And that's the thing. You were talking earlier about a statistic for about a third of young adults going into adulthood that don't particularly make it into that 30 plus point in time in their life, because at that point they're dealing with the unwelcome consequences.
That's true.
Can you talk to us about that just a little bit?
Well, it goes back to the transition piece that every educator, diabetes, medical doctor, endocrinologist has to deal with. It is a huge issue, and I think it would take many years before it's ever resolved 100%. But I think because the stresses that one goes through, just being a kid, starting university, being a youth, an adult.
That's a stress in itself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the fact is the socialization is different. Many of them don't tell their friends that they have diabetes, many of them. So if they come off looking drunk, they could be very low, and it could be life-threatening.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there's been some very tragic endings to some of these stories.
Yeah.
However, it's interesting because when these kids get scholarships, they're like the top 5%. These kids, not just scholastically, their disciplines, they've
Yeah.
showed improvement, they're committed, they know what their routine is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And surprisingly enough, I would say about 30%, 25 to 30% of these kids in their first and second year, they end up in emergency. They have some issues because they just want to be who they want to be.
Well, they just want to have normalcy. They just want to
Yeah.
they want to have the freedoms that everyone else does. And you know what? Someone living with type 1 diabetes and being around younger people with it, I get it.
Yes.
We think that in our older years too. Like,
Yes.
just give me one day off. Just
Exactly.
one day in my life. Just
Aw.
one day. And so I totally understand. But, because of our timing and the ages that we're talking about, we don't always have all the experience that we need.
It's true.
And sometimes our families are not our best support systems either. Sometimes it's those outside of our families.
They used to call parents when my kids were younger helicopter parents, but I understand in this generation they're called bulldozer parents. So I see with all the electronics, I mean, you can actually know where your kids are 24/7. It's insane. And I find that the kids today, they're a lot more dependent on their parents on so many ways. I speak to families where kids are 22, 23. Parents are still buying their their insulin, their strips. They're still, so it's different. It's a different generation.
Well, do you have statistics? Let me just ask you, because I know what some of the statistics are in the U.S. And so this could be a North American statistic, but are you familiar with the average cost for a family or for a person to be able to manage what people need to manage with their type 1 diabetes, and what that cost would look like in an annual calendar year?
So if it's just needles, insulin, it's about $8,000.
Okay, now if it's all the other doctor visits and things like that.
See, in Canada, we don't pay for that. So, and for the insulin pump, it's a lot more. Now with all the technical, glucose monitors, it's hugely expensive. It's these Lancets or these sensors are $200, and it's like 3 days, and it's very, very expensive.
Yes, no, it is. I know I was looking at some stats just across the board, and in the States, I know their healthcare system's different, but this is a global summit. And so, and reading in WHO, World Health Organization as well, I think the average cost of people is anywhere between $13,700 to $14,700 a year. And that's not looking at preventive measures. I mean, I know that a lot of people go for the circulation therapies with massage, and they're looking at some vitamin supplements, and they're looking at some health conscious things with fitness and fitness clubs and, different things. So it's not an inexpensive condition to be living with for an individual or the family, because it impacts the family. It impacts people's retirement because they have got to spend the money that they'd otherwise have for their golden years.
It's so true.
For today.
We had a situation about 10 years ago. We supported a program called Medical Assistance Program. And we had, for the scholarship application again, it was an awareness. We had 3 sons who had diabetes. Single mother, lived in a trailer park outside of Ottawa. They had to cut their strips in half. They had to go from clinic to clinic and ask for insulin. I mean, it was horrible.
That is.
Even in Ontario, it was bad.
No, I hear you.
So I can imagine how, and insulin is 4 or 5 times more expensive in the States. Is that how that goes?
Well, it is. Can I share a short story?
Of course.
I was invited and attended on the Oprah cruise last year this time.
Wow.
How exciting is that? So I
Wow.
had some great friends from around the world, a girlfriend from Paris, a girlfriend from Texas, a girlfriend from Ontario, and we all went together. So we met. And so then we were going to go onto the cruise ship the next day. And we were in a hotel, a friend and I, and my insulin had frozen in
Oh.
the fridge just because the
Uh,
fridge was like on
yeah.
cold, cold, cold. Everything was frozen, the food.
Oh my gosh.
And I didn't think twice. But my friend said to me, I don't think you can use that insulin because it's frozen. Can you? And I wasn't even thinking. I was just excited because we're just packing to go onto the cruise ship. And I
Oh
said, you're
gosh.
right. You're right.
Oh dear.
But do you know, what I had to go through. I couldn't get insulin anywhere. They changed it from all the years before. And I'm out of country because this is the United States, not Canada. It took me over 5 hours and a private pharmacy that was family owned in order to get it. And here we pay, I don't know, what is it, $40, let's give or take. And there it was like 371.
Insane.
And you can't even get it. I said to the pharmacist in one of the grocery stores there, would you rather see me on the floor than to give me insulin because I have an hour of it left because
Yes.
my other insulin froze? And do you know what the response was? And my friend's looking at me, and I'm not getting upset. I'm just listening. I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do for you.
Yeah. I know it's
It's
so
like, do
sad.
these medical professionals understand it could be life and death?
No, it's amazing how uninformed
Yeah.
medical professionals are about diabetes to the
Yes.
point where I remember taking my kids, they're competitive hockey players and they've had injuries. I took them to emergency. I said they have diabetes and they had no idea what to do. They had
No.
no idea.
Zero.
The awareness with kids with diabetes or even adults with diabetes, I mean, type 2, yeah, it's fine. They know what to do, I guess. Just have a box drink. But, when these kids are on all these delivery systems and, the insulin pumps, the continuous glucose monitor, they have no idea what it means and how it impacts their health.
No. And, when it comes to, and that's why, there's this holistic diabetes educators program to help bridge that gap as well. And, what's really cool about us reconnecting after all these years is I think we really are, it's really education,
Yes.
awareness, because
Yes.
people's lives, quality of lives, longevity depend
Yes.
on it, right?
I absolutely agree.
So you know what? If you can leave one message, maybe two, but if you could leave one for sure with our listeners, and this is really great because so many talks and so many interviews are, specifically for 90% of people with diabetes, which are pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes. As we're talking about type 1 diabetes, if there's one nugget that you can leave with someone, what is that today? Like, what can we give them that they can go out and use today?
Are you talking for people with diabetes or youth who are living with diabetes?
Yeah.
Be honest with yourself. Don't ever be ashamed of having diabetes. It's not who you are, it's just what you have. It should not prevent you from doing anything in this world because you're the master of your own destiny. Even having diabetes should not hold you back.
Oh my gosh, how wonderfully said. And I know that when we started this, you were talking about, and that's why we think so much alike, look at diabetes as an opportunity and let it be a guide, let it be a teacher.
That's beautiful.
I'm
very proud of my sons, I have to say. They're adults now, they have families. I have one son is a surgeon who has a very demanding schedule. I have another son who's a real estate professional, and I have another son who's a very successful trainer to the stars. So it's really a wonderful. I'm very proud of all three of my sons, and even though it was a long, hard journey for my husband and I.
Yeah.
We had them in sports. My husband coached them in hockey, and it was really quite, and now the results are great. now they're healthy and strong.
Well, that's very inspirational, and I'm sure that our listeners are going to be thinking, "Wow, if Barbara and what she's done with her family, and if her foundation or Diabetes Hope Foundation is helping people, there is so much hope for me too." So I think that that's the biggest thing that we're giving
Thank
our
you so
audience
much for
today.
this show. It was very heartwarming and inspirational.